Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Travis Waldstein with Waldstein Plumbing, Air Serve Heating, Air Conditioning with this week's Circle of Trades. Again, we got Steve Waldstein's taking us a little bit to reconnect, something about children and daycare and activities. So we're a little behind schedule, but we got Steve back in here today. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You say, with Waldstein Heating and Plumbing and all that. I'm with Waldstein retired. I don't know. I guess I'm not associated with anybody anymore.
There you go. Yeah, what? Who am I with? Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I don't feel nearly as important as you.
Well, I don't know if I feel important or not. Like I said, I'm a port and a legend in my own mind. So just
There you
keep
go.
that in mind, folks. So anyway, well, hey, last time we left off, we were talking CT, and we're not on the CT where you hit your head. So we're talking. I kind of want to call it construction technology, but it's not really construction technology. What's the correct term for it?
Current technical education.
There you go. Current technical education. So current technical education. So I was, as him and me were taught earlier, but I got to go sit down on one of these wonderful bureaucratic meetings on Monday, and as I tell you, and I do appreciate the invite from Council Bluffs Public Schools to come in and talk. I'm going to premise with I appreciate the opportunity to come in and listen. They had about 40 people there, which I thought was very positive. It sounds like Council Bluffs Public Schools has kind of jumped in. Steve, for those of you who don't know, they've jumped in real heavy. They've put on a whole career, kind of like our shop class when you and me were in high school, to where you got your math, your science, your woods, metals, automotive. They're building a building outside. They got this going on at TJ High School, and they got us on at AL High School, and they've really kind of been into this last 3 years. So it's great that they're doing that.
Right.
And they had some advisors from Iowa Western out there too, and I'm coming out there as an advisor, and it was about. So the first semester talked about all the stuff that's going on and what they're doing for 2024, and that was great. Then I go jump in to say, hey, we're going to break into this roundtable discussion, and they go, well, we had this meeting, or you need to go sit in. So and they hand us this god awful terrible graph. And the guy who's running has got a Chromebook. He doesn't know how to run a Chromebook. And you're reading this graph, and it's like really small. And we're supposed to go through and answer a series of 6 questions based off this graph. And I'm going to be honest with you. My first thought is the person that wrote the graph, I'd have fired their ass if it would have been my people that wrote the graph. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like they wanted me to make assertions to help them with funding based off this graph. And I'm kind of like, is this what this advisory thing is supposed to be? I went through it, and finally about 3 minutes, I said, okay, I'm tired of being nice. The cuffs came off, and we had this discussion. Mm-hmm. And listen, I just went off and been Travis Waldstein, and I'm like, I said, love the fact you got a program with Iowa Western, love the fact your kids can go out there and learn a skill or a trade. But I said, the first thing that I said was, for what I do with the state of Iowa, Department of Labor, in apprenticeship, none of that counts till they're 18. So any of the classes, none of their stuff, if you're 16, 17, where you're in high school, you're learning, and that's great. I'm not for that. But to count towards a career, not a thing counts till you're 18 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I sat through this, and to be honest, I wanted to write the gal a letter. I wanted to send the gal that set this up and send it back and says, why the hell were we here? I mean, if you didn't need me there to tell you if this graph coincided with what you guys think you're doing, they're asking about diversity and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm not sitting in the classroom. I'm not seeing what's going on. And I'm kind of like, Jesus, we got $850 million, and we're going to burn half this stuff up because of bureaucratic bullshit. Excuse my French. So if I'm a high school kid or a young adult wanting to go into this program, this money, I said, what's this money being used for? And so we want to talk about why kids should get into this, but
Mhm.
you've lived on this side of the on that
Right.
side of the fence for a while, and I know you definitely have some opinions. So
Right.
I kind of wanted to kind of get your 2 cents on
Well, yeah, I mean, it is very frustrating. Yeah, the entire my entire educational career as a current technical teacher, and then being in administration, I had a lot of the same frustrations, and that was basically being handcuffed
it.
by policies, by the Department of Ed, all these different entities on what I could and could not do as a teacher, and also at a community college level, what we could and could not do. And I am all about local control.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest, what I always thought when I was a career and technical educator, I wanted to develop a technical program that was built around the community's environment in terms of uh, manufacturing. Was there, heavy in construction, and also teach as many different skill sets as I could. And I think we talked about that, last time. I'll
Yeah,
go back. I'll go back to take construction, not to be a construction worker, but to be informed homeowner someday. And
absolutely.
and the amount of, I'll call it, seat time that you have to do at meetings only to not really come up with anything in that meeting other than this was great discussion. We're going to set up another meeting in a month to continue the conversation. And then that meeting would come and that meeting would end with the same, this was great conversation. Let's set up another meeting to continue the conversation. And you go back and look after a year of that and go, what in the world have we really done to resolve the problem that we were initially having these meetings for? And it just seems like sometimes that's what we're up against. And in as a school teacher, there are so many things that you have to do in terms of your licensure, and I understand all of that. But when it came to your program, the Department of Ed was telling you what you could and could not teach.
Yeah,
For instance, back when I was a teacher, you could not have what I would call a traditional woods class.
yeah.
And there are a lot of great things, and you can call it woods, I can call it manufacturing processes.
Mm,
And they might approve that, but if I call it woods, they wouldn't. And so I can say manufacturing processes dash woods. Boom,
mm-hmm.
it's approved. It's that type of stuff that would literally, I think, drives all current technical educators crazy and administrators.
Yeah.
The bottom line is kids need some hands-on learning. I think we all can say, no matter who you are, you learned. I think a lot of people learn better when it's hands-on. You're doing it,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of things you can learn in a woods class.
yes, absolutely.
But when you come back and look at everything that goes on, it can be frustrating. It can be overwhelming. Yeah, that conversation you had right there. I've sat in I don't know how many of those over the 30 plus years, only to go, what happened right there? What are we going to do after this now? Did
Well,
we really solve a problem here?
well,
And
that's
you
it,
don't.
yeah. You know, let me jump in for a second.
Hmm.
The thing is, there was two people from industry. There was myself, one from a car dealership here, and one from a shelving manufacturer out of Omaha,
Hmm.
and they were there in this meeting, and they're going through this, and I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? So that's the first thing. And I finally got up and I said in this meeting, I said, you know what? I'm glad that you're teaching plumbing. I'm glad you're teaching HVAC. I'm glad
Hmm.
you're teaching automotive. I'm glad all them things are available to kids to be able to look at for an option.
Hmm.
If you're willing to let them go to high school, fantastic. But I say, you know what? I don't necessarily care if they learn that skill at 16 or 17,
Right.
is specific to a trade,
Hmm.
as I am having a core base that they know how to use
Hmm.
voltmeters, that
Right.
they understand basic electricity, they
Hmm.
understand metals, they
Hmm.
play around with home car care. If you
Hmm.
want to talk about, HVAC or
Hmm.
plumbing and understand how the basic systems work.
Hmm.
But I'm not, and like I said, it'd be as much as home ownership, as much as anything. I don't need the school to teach something
Right.
that especially if it's not going to count towards anything. And I was just like, I left this meeting. I said,
Mm-hmm.
give me a round-rounded kid that is. I say kid. I don't. So
Mm-hmm.
I say young adult that I just like. Just give me someone rounded that wants to learn and is
Right.
interested in this stuff, and don't give the specifics. I'll teach the specifics, or I'll send the school for the specifics.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a kid that's just young and is not
Mm-hmm.
afraid to work and knows how to talk to people and
Right.
text or email that wants to
Yeah.
learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just I came out of this frustrated, and
Yeah.
if you're a student, I don't know what it's like for a student. Okay, I've been going to school for a year and a half. What does it get me? Well, it gets you a skill.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it doesn't account towards your 8,000 hours for apprenticeship for me, and I can't use the
Mm-hmm.
hours towards, the first year apprenticeship or the schooling, there's no accreditation, then what's the point?
Right.
And so if I'm a young adult, or like I said, going to college, going to military, going to look at doing into the trades, you know, you know, I just came out of it and says, while I applaud the effort, it's better than what they did 6, 7 years ago. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, are we really doing any better? And so I came across glad for the effort, glad for the meaning, but kind of frustrated about the whole how their whole process is.
Right.
Now Council's Place got their deal. I'm just like Sheldon's got their deal. I know
Mm-hmm.
Lewis
Mm-hmm.
Central Trainer kind of got their own deal,
Mm-hmm.
and Glenwood's got a totally different deal that I got an
Mm-hmm.
invite to later this month. So it's almost like there's all these tentacles into the pie, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that we're getting any closer to helping the situation out because it's more of a money grab
Mm-hmm.
than it is actually are we teaching the kids anything,
Right.
and it's like what a waste. I mean,
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. And the apprenticeships. We worked on quite a few apprenticeships over the years. I'm
mm-hmm.
not sure if we were the first or second to get an apprenticeship program approved by the Department of Ed for high school students that was on competency based instead of hourly based, and that was a big deal
That's a
because
huge deal.
you were right on when you got the 18-year-old, you got a lot of kids that are under 18. There are a lot of restrictions into what they can and cannot do out in industry,
Yes,
and that's across the board industry. And the competency based was more of that instructor working with them and having that student become proficient in certain competencies and they could check it off. There are some
absolutely.
limitations to that, but it was a step in the right direction. But as we continue to look at things, um, I don't want this to sound like the two Waldsteins are here just complaining about everything.
We're good at that, by the
But yeah, but
way.
there's time there needs to be some reform and things need to change.
Yes,
And it cannot be the old mindset that's still running the process. You can say, well, we got new ideas. You do have new ideas, but it goes back to the old mindset. And it's just how you're doing it is a little different than the way we did it 10 years ago. But again, the end result of what you're trying to do is the same where we don't get anything accomplished.
yeah,
And how that happens, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not because there's so many frustrations that are out there that hinder you from doing what you know needs to be done.
yeah,
And when you have still a negative mindset, and I, people, opinions are one thing. I have mine, other people have theirs. And
mm-hmm.
everybody's open to their own opinions, and I appreciate conversations, but the mindset of parents, I feel, has moved slightly into um, accepting that maybe their child was to go into a skilled trade, but it's not near what it needs to be. It's still the mindset of my kid needs to be go to a 4 year, needs to be a doctor, needs to be a lawyer, needs to do this, needs to do that. I still feel that guidance counselors are still in that push, although I think it is getting it's improved again, just like the parents concept. But we have such a still a negative stereotype to our students about career trades that it's it needs to happen younger.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be opening skilled trade, like you said. Maybe we're not going to teach a second grader plumbing, but there are certain things that we can be teaching in the curriculum that could, when they get into maybe high school, they have that foundation.
Yep.
And we're not exposing these students to all the and you can't, I gotta rephrase that. We're not exposing students to enough of the trades and jobs that are out there. It is
Mm-hmm.
really easy to look at an automobile. A student rides in an automobile, things like that. They might become interested and want to be an auto mechanic. Maybe they want to be a car designer. Great. I can say that about um, uh, many of the different jobs that are out there. But it is some of those skilled trades that students are never exposed to. I'll go back to industrial instrumentation and control. I
Mm-hmm.
had no clue that was out there,
No.
and it's something that students just aren't aware of. So how do we make careers aware to students at a younger age to get them hopefully excited about that career path and not have to worry about all the other obstacles that are out there? My son, my son is a senior, really wants to get into criminal psychology. Okay, I think he'll be the first one to tell you this. He's all those CSI shows that are on TV right now, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds pretty
Yes,
great
like
when you're
Vegas.
watching. Well,
Yeah.
when you're watching all of that, and great, he learned about that, and he's like, you know what, that interests me. I want to go. How many TV shows out there are based around the world of an industrial welder that's nuclear certified?
Not very many.
We
So
don't
you
glamorize.
usually
We
if
don't.
it's MacGyver, they're blowing something up.
It's not glamorized, right? And
Uh,
sometimes you can't. I mean, you get dirty. I mean, you get dirty, and it just happens. Some days you do, some days you don't. Some days you're hot, some days you're cold. But
yeah.
it's just something that I think we need to really take a big look at. There are school systems out there in the East Coast that career and technical education is kind of the hub of the school, and everything else kind of feeds into that hub. Your
Yeah.
math, your sciences, and you said a little bit earlier, having a student that can look you in the eye and carry on a conversation.
Yeah.
Those are all things that, because of the world that we live in and the phones and things like that, are becoming less and less. But
Oh,
that's the hub, and everything else goes around. Or here in Iowa and a lot of states, is you have your reading, writing, math, and then you have, well, if you have enough open credits, here's a shop class, or here's an egg class you can take.
mhm.
And it can be very frustrating on so many levels.
Oh yes, very much so. Very, very much so. Like I said, we're not going to fix the problems today,
Mhm.
but I think there is better ways to do it.
Mhm.
You know, I talking about job. You know, talking about this. You talk about industrial welder and for doing nuclear. I think underwater welding. For Navy guys. Divers. That do that. Hell, I think about the Stoffern boys from up around Sandboard. I went to school around it. What they do? They do freaking tile work. You know how much
Sure.
freaking tile work's being done. For
Mhm.
if you're doing the ag work at tile,
Mhm.
and then you look at all the science and everything that's in the ag stuff, and you talk,
Mhm.
the hog barns now. Shit, when I was a kid, like I said, you dress like you and me are right now, and you go cut pig nuts and do that kind of
Mhm.
stuff because that's part of raising pigs. And hell, now it's almost like you got to dress up like a damn like you're walking into a freaking nuclear war zone,
Mhm.
to do any work on freaking hogs. Way different than what it was growing up.
Mhm.
So it's there's so many opportunities that we don't even touch about.
Right.
Obviously, I know about plumbing, heating, construction, but there's so much more out there that just aren't exposed to. Unfortunately, one of the things that's happening, and I want to get to the kids here in a little. I say the kids, young adults are learning this
Right.
stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is the high school's been so far behind that you're not getting exposed to it till they get to a community college
Mm-hmm.
or a trade school. But here's my thing, and this comes back to the person that's currently in office who I did not vote for. So there'll be some Waldsteins that will hate me for that, and that's okay. Especially if they've worked for the federal government all their life. But oh, did I
Mm-hmm.
say that out loud? I'm sorry. Um, Anyway, where we're paying off student debt. Listen, if you went to school and you rung up 100 grand of student debt, why should I pay for your student debt? I said, I've got guys in my office. I have 4 guys in our apprenticeship program right now. And when they're done, they're going to have something in my mind that's equivalent to a 4 degree, and they're going nothing for it. And they're going to be 80,000 less in debt than what somebody is that went to a school for free. And I'm not against going to school, so please don't understand that.
No, no.
But why should I pay for that off? There's other ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I didn't pay. I'm also that person. And listen, my parents didn't pay for my school, and I joined the Navy. It is what it is. You know what? I told my kids growing up, guess what? Life's tough.
Mm-hmm.
You want to do something? Harley got a scholarship to Iowa. Hayden and Hunter joined the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have came and worked for me, and Hayden does work for me now.
Sure.
There, I just, and here's the thing: I don't think kids want to be 80 to 100 grand in debt. At least I don't. And I can't imagine someone who's 21, 22 years old wants to be,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're not sure that's what you want to do forever.
Yeah.
What 18-year-old knows what he wants to do forever? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
shoot, they don't even know who they're going to be dating the next day, let alone,
Mm-hmm.
or Tinder or whatever, social Snapchat or whatever they're on
Mm-hmm.
now. So I just, I think there's a better way. But going back to my original thought, I think there's so many jobs, there's so many opportunities out there. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess my thought this is going to kind of segue this to your next point, Steve. You dealt with you dealt with high school, you dealt with community colleges
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. You dealt with all these students,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, you're not your job, but the people who ran your programs for you, their job was that. Listen, let's call for was sell the program.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like I want people to do business for me. Hopefully, I do a good job of explaining what we do, and hopefully, you buy off of
Mm-hmm.
what we're providing. So if you're someone that's looking to go to college or looking to go to trade school or looking to jump into the trades, what were you, and it's not been that long, what are you telling, because listen, college isn't for everybody, even trade
Mm-hmm.
school isn't for everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
what are you telling these 18-year-olds? I mean, if you're not having to sell something because you need to get butts in seats, which I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
get that part. It happens a little bit with everything.
Right.
What are you telling your kids? What are you telling prospective students that might be looking at something? What if you're having a kind of conversation? What are you telling them?
Well, that's a great question. And when we have, say, student tours come through, or I think every community college in the state of Iowa has something called eighth grade exploratory day, where
Mm-hmm.
you pick so many different sessions that look like they interest you. You go listen to them at a community college. You have junior career day, where now you're getting a little more refined. Where again, the students are coming onto your campus. They come on. We'd have 1,500, 2,000 kids that are juniors coming onto NCC's campus, and they would hear many different types of trades. But again, they picked what kind of interested them. And when we had students come through, my discussion with them was always, if there's a program or there's a career that you are interested in, but we do not offer at NCC, we can still help you because we know the colleges around the area and the
Sure.
tri-state area that probably do offer that type of program.
Mm-hmm.
So still communicate with us, still talk to us because you're in the business really of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's
Education's in the building of relationships, positive relationships. And that's first and foremost.
mm-hmm.
When you have kids come on and they're looking, uh, for instance, manufacturing. I think again in our last the segment I talked about, more and more kids that would come and look in the window on just a general tour of that manufacturing program and go, I want to do that. Not really knowing what that
Neither
was.
did
And they had never taken any high school shop classes. They didn't have those skill sets coming in,
I.
but
No.
that's what they wanted to do. We had students that came in and saw the auto program. The auto program at NCC is second to none, in my opinion. Whether you're a Snap-on, Mac, it doesn't bother me, but we partnered with Snap-on
Mm-hmm.
through their educational program because they got a lot of different things around it. And we took a barrier out. Students who thought they wanted to be an auto mechanic before the partnership with Snap-on had to buy $4,000 or $5,000 worth of tools and a toolbox. Only after a semester go,
That
this isn't
sucks.
what I want to do, so they don't have it. So now they have this $4,000 or $5,000 payment. Well, we took that away. All the tools were provided for them, and there's certain things they did so when they graduated they would have those tools they needed. But the point is, it exposed them to something. The kids could try out and go, yeah, this is really fun, but yeah, maybe I don't want to do this, so I move on. They'll find something that interests them. But we told students when they came in, what are your interests?
Mm-hmm.
What do you like to do?
Yeah.
Um, they took all sorts of different little tests online that would tell them, well, your answers gear you more towards this career than that career,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped guide them a little bit. But just like the high school exploratory in junior high and high school, introducing you to trades, I feel like the community college is taking on more of that role where it's exposing them to trades, and kids might not know exactly what they want right away.
Yeah.
So we have to get that in my opinion, back into the schools.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
told the students all about, yeah, you hit it. Credit is money. There's
yeah.
no aid coming into community colleges from the state anymore, so it's all credits. It's not students, it's credits.
Yeah.
Because one student could take 2 credits, another student could take 20 credits. So it's
Yeah.
all about credits.
Yeah.
And you have to have so many credits really to stay afloat. So it is getting students into a program.
Yeah.
The problem is the pages inside the book don't always match the cover, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You, you in your business, the quality of your work
Yeah.
to me is the pages. And,
Yeah.
that gets communicated amongst, your area you serve. But
Absolutely.
the cover of the book is shiny, neat, professional service, and your pages match up.
Yeah.
That's not always the case in some programs.
No.
Let's just come out and say it all across the state.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's
Well.
it's just we got the students in here, but we don't have maybe the technology that we need. We don't have the instructors maybe that we need. Um, and sometimes it is not always the best situation for a student. The
Yeah.
other thing that I will hit on, sometimes a student thinks this is what they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not cutting it in the classroom.
Yeah.
I will say that students have the opportunity to get help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like anyone does.
Yeah.
Maybe they need some extra help in their math skills because they're just a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen firsthand students who don't cut it academically
Mm-hmm.
stay in a program because of credits. You lose a student, you lose all these credits over, let's say, a year or 2 year program.
Yeah.
You're
That's
not
tough.
only doing a disservice to the trade, you're doing a disservice to that student
Oh, yeah. And if,
because
especially
they're not going to
if,
cut it when they get out.
no. Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, when you talk about that, one of my guys that works for me, superstar, been with me for a long time. But you know what? He tests terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean he didn't know what he did. I mean, he's sharp
Mm-hmm.
as a whip. But you know, it's one of the things we kind of go into. We talk about trade stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He passed the Nebraska test, the
Mm-hmm.
licensing pretty quick. Man, we struggled and struggled and struggled. He finally got the Iowa test.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that he wasn't smart. It wasn't that he couldn't read. It wasn't that he couldn't do whatever. He just was not a good test taker. You
Right.
know,
And,
it,
and and I think
it,
those things are all taken into consideration. I'm not talking about necessarily that test taker that's hard on it. I have, yeah, I have a son who I does very well in school, but he still gets stressed out about tests and sometimes doesn't perform like he should because he's so stressed about them. I'm
you're
talking about
talking.
that student that over and over again through the course of a semester or even, you know, a year of a 2-year program just shows over and over again in labs and in the classroom, they're
There's
not cutting it.
they're not cutting it.
And like I said, those are the students that you just don't want to throw them out, but you need to get them maybe into another program, help them in another area. This maybe isn't quite for them.
Hmm.
And it's a tough conversation to have, but it's a conversation that needs to be there because, like I said, you're doing a disservice to the industry when they graduate, but also to that student
Hmm.
when they graduate because they're not going to cut it.
Yeah,
And just a hard work ethic, things like that. Yes, goes a long way, but if you hire somebody who came out of a program that's supposed to have these skill sets at the start, and as you know, you learn every single day, you got to keep learning, but they don't have those skills at the start, and they're constantly screwing up basic a
yeah.
basic job, even though they come to work on time, they're a nice person, constantly screwing up because they just don't have it.
Hmm.
What are you going to do, Travis? What are you going to do to that employee if you?
I just had to do it recently. I said, "Sorry, this just isn't going to work."
Yeah.
It kind of you mentioned a great point. You know, the first thing is, you know what they call a doctor that gets a C?
What's what?
A doctor.
Okay,
So keep that in mind.
I
So
got
there's
it. Yeah.
B, and C doctors. And, you know, anybody that studies business psychology understand it'll probably over your
Mhm.
head. You know,
Yeah.
my wife went to Nyack up at Mason State for nursing school, and listen, 70 at the school at Nyack at that time, 70% was C minus, but you could still pass.
Hmm.
But the nursing program was 75%. Now, my wife had never worked in she never worked in a nursing home or anything to get any experience.
Hmm.
So she's going to school. She was, and the people who had worked in the field, not always, but for the most part,
Hmm.
understood stuff better and they got higher scores.
Hmm.
So she went through and listen, my wife struggled to get through nursing school up at Nyack. She got through it, she passed, but
Hmm.
she struggled. And then she went out to the real world and she worked.
Hmm.
And you know, she went back 20 years later to get her nursing to get her 4-year degree at Methodist
Hmm.
College in Omaha, and her grades were off the freaking chart.
Yeah.
Well, what changed? 20 years of experience will help you a lot with that. Having experience doing whatever.
Hmm.
So, you know, sometimes it happens worse for us, but you know, if you're not picking up the fundamentals on the front end, or you're there because you have to be there because
Hmm.
you don't care, or listen, you know what, you might want to be a rocket scientist, but listen,
Hmm.
you just don't have the mask. Because listen, I flunked algebra my freshman year in high school because I'd rather party first period than go to class. Guess what? I'm not worth a shit at today. Friggin' algebra. You know what? I deal with geometry every day, and I do just fine. So
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
um, but you have to. But you have. At first, you got to be honest with yourself sometimes, and that's a
Hmm.
self evaluation. And you know, if you're worried about the money, that's the wrong. I mean, from the strong perspective, because it's wasting the teacher's time, it's wasting the students' time, and you know, listen. If a student wants to do it and they gut out and they're giving your heart into it, and listen, the best they're going to be is a B student in the classroom, but they're everything else. Fine, okay, it is what it is. You know, there were several points to it,
Hmm.
but you want to make sure that you're kind of all in, because if you're not all in on it,
Right.
you know, and I think that's the thing before you get people that commit, that they really need to spend time. You kind of mentioned something. Why do they do an eighth grade day and then they do a junior day? Why do they not do that for freshmen and sophomore as well?
Great question. Great question. I don't have an answer.
I mean, if you're going to have a truly explore once every 3 years, I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry. I mean, you really need to have more exploratory, from a high school level, let alone, get into college or trade school or whatever. I think the other thing that needs to happen, and, if you're young, you want to go to school. I had a parent 2 years ago that graduated with Hunter, and I've had him on my podcast before. Great kid. Started a lawn business. Peyton Ludington's his name. Great kid. Love him to death. He talked about going into the Marine or Navy Corps and talks about, oh, his mother gave me the look of
Mm-hmm.
Black Death when I said, listen, military is a great avenue. Not everybody likes to do it. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're interested, and he may or may not, he had a surgery or whatnot, and I'm not going to get all
Mm-hmm.
that, but he'd be a kid that'd be a great fit for that. But he didn't want to go to school, and you know what? No problem with him, and he's been
Mm-hmm.
successful.
Right.
But he's got an idea what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well-rounded kid, great family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, really, really, really like the kid, and if I had 10 people like him, and if I had two want to come to work for me, I could make health technicians out, no question in my
Yep.
mind. He's
Mm-hmm.
actually working for a company, learning how to weld
Mm-hmm.
right now. Life skill. If he does it for a year and thinks it sucks, guess what? You can always go do your own welding. It's a skill you can take with you, do
Mm-hmm.
lots of different stuff. And I think that's the thing that people you have to be open to if you're young adults or parents, or if you're looking at going to school. What's the kid's interests? The reading, writing, arithmetic, all that stuff's important, don't get me wrong, but what does the kid want to do? Besides TikTok and whatever else is out there now,
Mm-hmm.
because TikTok or
Mm-hmm.
OnlyFans for the most part is not going to pay the bills. I mean, for the most part, so you got to figure out, how they're going to make it in the world. And there's lots of different ways. There's lots of opportunities, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't. The thing is, don't put yourself needlessly into debt. My favorite thing. Oh, I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna go to NCC, or I'm gonna go to NIAC or DMAC or Iowa
Mm-hmm.
Western for a year. So you're gonna go spend $10,000
Yeah.
for a year, 5,000 for what? To figure out
Right.
what I want. You can go dig a ditch, save a whole hell of a lot of money.
But yeah, when you talked about that student that maybe was a C student in a program, yeah, I why were they a C student? Is it because they were given a task and maybe didn't complete the task in the time frame that they were supposed to, but when they completed the task finally, it did what it was supposed to do, so therefore they didn't get as good of a grade?
Yeah,
To me, you solved it. Yeah, when you talk about time is money, we all hear that, but there's so many factors that go into it.
yeah,
And I have a nephew
mm-hmm.
who his older brother is an engineer. That's what he
Shoot,
wanted to do. His older sister is a pharmacist. He
okay,
didn't want to go to college when he graduated.
don't blame
It
them.
just wasn't there. And I, I believe I got the story correct, but I believe in high school is when he started working for Fairway,
Okay,
as a high school job. And he
yeah,
got into the meat department and he fell in love with cutting meat, grinding meat, doing all that stuff. And
yeah,
and Fairway is taking him now and really grooming him
to be
to
a
be the
director.
manager of his own meat department at a Fairway.
Yeah,
And you want to talk about making good money? They make good money.
yes, they do.
And he's doing something that he loves. The thing I love most about that story is he has, his dad who it didn't matter to him necessarily if he wanted to go to a 4 year and do that or do this, as long as he was able to make a living doing
Mm-hmm.
something that he loves.
Support himself.
And I think really his siblings might have had more of an issue with it because I don't think they understood that you can make a pretty good living doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he just continues to do better and better. And I love it. I'm a girl guy, so when I'm at family gatherings with him, I'm like, hey, what's this cut? What's this cut? What do you got? What's the price you got on this? And he goes through and you can tell in talking to him, he loves what he's doing, and that
Oh,
goes a long ways.
Oh, absolutely. By the way, this man that we're talking to right here, if you ever want to know anything about a Weber grill or any freaking grill that's ever been made, you need it refurbished. This is the man to talk to. Talk about a hobby that he loves. Don't know if it makes him any money or not, but he definitely loves doing it. But
Yeah, you brought that up, Travis. So yes, I have a problem. I currently only, I think I only have 9 Weber grills right now. I used to have a lot more. And when I cook something, it's just a joke in my house that I'll tell my wife, oh, I'm going to go cook that on the 2020 Spirit E335. And she doesn't necessarily find it as amusing as I do, but I'm going to go cook this on the 2018 22-inch Weber charcoal master touch kettle.
oh my
She
god,
doesn't find it nearly as funny, but I do. And um, but again, what's weird? Okay, that that that's a passion, and I get excited about talking about it. I didn't know anything about a grill back then, but the point is, these kids are being streamlined into certain areas because it's what society or their parents or the school system thinks they need to do, and they do need some guidance. I mean, we all know that the kids need guidance,
yes, they
but
do.
we got to quit handcuffing their creativity side.
Yes.
When
Well,
I go in, and I used to do some talks
hmm
to educators and administrators, I always said, think about back when you were in the elementary grades, Travis. That's a long time ago for you. But was
I
your
got a lot of
education,
trouble, by the way.
well, beside the times that you weren't in, the principal's office, but you're actually in the classroom, think back to the activities that you might have been doing. Was it standing and listening to a teacher lecture for 4 hours a day, and then you study out a book? No, you were doing a lot of hands-on type activities, right?
Uh-huh.
A lot of hands-on things. You were use obviously learn how to use scissors, cut, write, do all this stuff. You were using your hands, and you were making things while
hmm
you were learning.
Yep.
You got into junior high, you didn't do that as much. It was more of, again, teacher, classroom. You can talk about some of the projects you might do, but it was more lecture. You get into high school, and although we can talk about student centered classrooms, we can talk about teacher centered classrooms, student led classrooms, all these different things. You're still not doing a lot of projects with your hands and in your creative mind that maybe you did when you were younger. You're
No.
being told what to do. My biggest, and I'm sorry, you educators who are maybe listening to this, I dislike immensely rubrics. And if you're familiar with what a rubric is, Travis, a
Not
rubric
right off
it is a score sheet. So if
Okay.
you're doing a project, do you
Okay.
remember the science? You remember the science projects maybe for science fair day, and you had to come up with a three panel display board, and you had to do all this research on maybe a science project.
I fucking
Well,
hate it,
think
but yeah.
about this. But think about this. This piece of paper tells you, okay, for for creativity or whatever, here's how you get 5 points. Here's how you get 4 points. Here's how you get 3 points. Here's how you get 1 point. So it tells you exactly what you need to do to get those total number of points. I hate, well, I don't like to use that word hate. That's why I said strongly dislike, but I dislike that because it tells the student exactly what they need to do to get an A. They're a robot. I want to see the creativity in a student and what that brings out.
hmm
And there might be some places where a rubric works in education, but I think it's just now exploded, and I,
Well,
I don't care for it all the time. But
well,
we
yeah.
need to get back to that mindset of, it's all right. We need to be creative. What are you interested in? You know how
Well,
how you how your mind thinks, where
yeah.
you can what you can do, and it's hard. When I went into education, I had an educator who had a huge impact in my life.
Hmm.
And I decided that I wanted to maybe have an impact in students' lives, maybe more than even teaching the content when I went into education.
Yeah,
And when you have that, how many kids are farmers? I would like to know how many kids that are currently farming grew up in the city.
not
They're
very
all
many.
right.
I know one right now, and he was involved with it, but his family didn't farm, and he got into it, and he's definitely bucking a trend.
I think that we could say the majority of people in farming obviously grew up in a farm. It's what they were exposed to. I
Yeah,
think I think we could honestly say that a lot of maybe people that are in the skilled trades had a parent or someone else, or they had a job that was in the skilled trades because they were exposed to it.
yeah,
How do we expose kids that don't have that? Not necessarily to say that they're going to be in HVAC, but at least we expose them to it to say, no, that's not quite what I want to do. That's kind of cool, but I want to do that, and then expose them that. That's the true answer. I mean,
well,
that's the question that I
mhm.
don't know what the answer is.